Am I the antagonist for not giving a 30-plus-year friend's debut novel a 5-star review? A beloved friend of over 30 years recently published a book. It's been released by a reputable publishing company and has received positive praise from well-known authors. As someone who frequently writes book reviews and has a substantial following, I always strive to provide detailed and honest assessments. In my review, I gave the novel a 4-star rating and wrote a thorough review filled with admiration. I refrained from including any negative comments or explanations as to why I didn't give it the 5th star. The book is undoubtedly commendable, with an ambitious scope and an impressive achievement. However, I reserve 5-star ratings for exceptional, nearly flawless literature that I would eagerly read again. I anticipated that even expressing this more tempered opinion might lead to criticism, so I chose not to elaborate on the 4-star rating. I believed that a review emphasizing its specifics and details would attract readers. Soon after, my friend contacted me, asking if I had intentionally given a 4-star rating on Amazon. They requested that I remove it immediately. Subsequently, they made a second demand for me to take it down from Goodreads as well. Before I could respond or take any action, the author's partner chimed in during our group chat. They wrote, "As you know, we are investing so much emotionally, financially, and energetically in promoting this book. Initial ratings hold significant importance, and anything less than 5 stars is unhelpful. Very unhelpful. It's inevitable that we may receive lower ratings, but we didn't expect them from a friend who grasps their impact." I spent an entire afternoon contemplating how to address this situation. Should I alter the rating to 5 stars and essentially lie for the sake of a good friend? It wouldn't be a big deal for me personally, but I honestly didn't anticipate being demanded to provide a guaranteed 5-star review. Alternatively, should I honor the author's initial request and simply remove the review? I perceived their request as straightforward. If I couldn't offer 5 stars, then it should be taken down. I tend to interpret things quite literally. Ultimately, I decided to comply with the request and remove the review. I responded saying, "If you believe that a 100% positive, detailed 4-star review is detrimental to your sales, I will honor your request and remove the review for now. I would never want to cause harm to you or your book sales." Unfortunately, my decision did not sit well with them. I was accused of betrayal and criticized for not awarding a perfect 5-star rating, especially when another author had claimed it would become a classic. However, it's worth noting that this author didn't provide a star rating in their blurb. Without delving into a separate discussion on the ASD spectrum, it's important to acknowledge that I sometimes struggle to grasp unwritten social norms or possess common sense in these types of situations. I'm genuinely devastated to think that this disagreement might jeopardize our incredible and long-lasting friendship. You wrote a detailed, honest review of your friend's book, giving it a very positive 4-star rating. Your friend's response, demanding a 5-star rating and asking you to take down the review, was unreasonable and unfair. Your friend's request for a perfect 5-star rating without any criticism or feedback shows a lack of understanding about the purpose of reviews. Reviews are meant to provide honest opinions, not just serve as marketing tools. You made a thoughtful decision to honor your friend's request to take down the review, even though it wasn't necessary. However, their reaction, accusing you of betrayal and berating you for not giving a 5-star rating, is an overreaction. Your friend's inability to handle a less-than-perfect rating from a friend is not your fault. It's unfortunate that your friendship is being tested over a review, but it's important to remember that you acted with integrity and honesty. Ultimately, your friend needs to understand that not all reviews will be perfect, even from friends, and they should appreciate the positive feedback that you gave. Am I the antagonist for refusing to babysit my brother's kids? The initial event occurred many years ago, but it still bothers me to this day and creates tension between my brother and me. My brother needed a babysitter while he was occupied with something. I can't recall the details. Despite working as a babysitter for a living and even being a nanny for a period, I was coerced into doing it for free by him and our mom just because he's family. I didn't expect my full rate, but it was frustrating to sacrifice my evening and a potential paid babysitting job without any compensation. Nevertheless, I agreed to do it as a favor. To make a long story short, his son, who was around 5 years old at the time, was behaving terribly despite my efforts to engage him with activities, his chosen TV shows, games, and more. He simply shut down, stopped listening, and started throwing things. I would firmly say no, move the objects out of his reach, and try to explain that throwing things isn't acceptable behavior. I suggested alternative activities, but within seconds, he would grab something else and throw it, often in my direction. This continued for about 20 minutes until I gave up and decided that if he couldn't behave and play nicely, he couldn't play at all. I cleaned up everything and put it away. There were only a few minutes left before my brother was supposed to arrive anyway, so I placed a chair in the corner and put his son in timeout. He screamed, cried, and threw a fit, but he stayed in the chair, and I ignored him. He was still crying when my brother showed up. When I say my brother was furious about me putting his son in timeout for misbehaving, I mean he completely lost control. He yelled at me, claiming that his kids wouldn't like me. I responded by saying that it was fine if they didn't like me, but it was crucial for them to respect me if they were ever under my care. He continued berating me until I finally informed him that I would no longer provide my services and he should find someone else, as he clearly wanted someone who would let his kids walk all over them, and that wasn't me. I never babysat for him again. That incident involved his oldest son, who is now 13, and he has 5 children now. The youngest is about 4, but I still refuse to babysit any of his children. Recently, we had a major argument because he couldn't find a babysitter, and simply because I was technically available, since I am disabled and work from home, I reminded him that I wouldn't be watching any of his kids due to the aforementioned event. He was furious that I still refused based on something that happened so long ago, and I'm unsure if I am being unreasonable or if I should let it go by now. So am I the asshole? You were already sacrificing your time and potential income to help him out when his son was misbehaving, and you handled the situation by putting the child in timeout, which is a reasonable disciplinary action. Your brother's reaction, yelling at you and berating you, was uncalled for. It is your choice to set boundaries and not subject yourself to babysitting for someone who does not respect and appreciate your efforts. Your brother needs to understand and respect your decision instead of expecting you to overlook the past incident. Am I the antagonist for refusing to dine out with my husband's best friend? My husband has a best friend named John that he's known since college. I really like John, but it's worth mentioning that John grew up very differently from both me and my husband, in that he comes from a wealthy family who supported him financially until he graduated from college and got his first job working for a major bank. He doesn't know what it's like to be poor or work a lower-paying service job and have to make ends meet because he never had to. I don't think it makes him a bad person, just out of touch with reality. That leads me to this. One thing about John is that I absolutely hate going out to eat with him. He is so rude to servers and will often find reasons to not tip them. He has a habit of trying to order off the menu or adding so many modifications to a dish that it's no longer recognizable and will get angry if it's even a little bit wrong. He doesn't have any allergies or intolerances. Dining with him can be embarrassing and mentally exhausting. Last night was the last straw for me. The 3 of us and another couple decided to try a newer restaurant in our city. After being seated, John seemed to be on his best behavior. No complicated cocktail or food order. In fact, he got a glass of wine and only made 2 modifications to his entree. The only negative was that our server seemed to be overwhelmed because of how busy the restaurant was. But she was pleasant, and you could tell she was trying her best to keep us happy, which is all that should matter. John got upset because she wasn't refilling his water as soon as he finished it. His second glass of wine took a while, and our entrees took about a half hour to get out. All the while, he's talking about how this was going to be reflected on his tip. I was annoyed. And then when our entrees did come out, one of his modifications didn't come out right, and he got extremely angry at the server, telling her how foolish she was, etc. I've never seen him get that angry with a server before. Usually he's just passive-aggressive. In response, I lost it at him and told him that he was overreacting to such a small mistake, and that it probably wasn't her fault. If he had such an issue, then he needed to speak to a manager and not yell at her about it. His meal was fixed soon after, and the rest of the night went smoothly. Of course, John left no tip, so I doubled mine to make up for it. In the parking lot, I told him that I would never eat out with him ever again if he was going to continue to act entitled to restaurant workers. I added that he needed to humble himself and not act like he's above anyone who doesn't work a white-collar job, because not all of us were born into money and left without saying goodbye. On the car ride home, my husband told me my comments to John were inappropriate and that I was an AH to him because he had every right to be mad. I replied that I had the right to not want to eat with people who behave like he does because it's exhausting. You're not wrong for being frustrated with John's behavior towards restaurant workers. It's understandable that his entitled and rude behavior would be embarrassing and mentally exhausting for you. It seems like you handled the situation appropriately by speaking up and expressing your concerns. Your husband's opinion that you were inappropriate towards John and that he had every right to be mad is a bit concerning. It's important for your husband to acknowledge the impact of John's actions on others, especially if it affects your overall dining experience. It's worth discussing with your husband how you feel and why it's important for you to set boundaries when it comes to dining with John in the future. It's also worth considering addressing the issue with John directly, as it seems like his behavior is causing strain in your relationship. Having an open conversation about how his actions make you feel may help him understand the impact of his behavior on others. Am I the antagonist for refusing to help around the house until I'm appreciated? I am a 16-year-old female, and my dad is a 47-year-old male. We have been living alone together for just over a year now. Previously, our household consisted of me, my dad, my stepmother, and her 2 sons from a previous relationship. However, my stepmother and my father broke up, and she moved out, taking her 2 boys with her. When my ex-stepmother and her kids lived with us, I always did all the chores except for cooking, as that was the norm. After they moved away, chores were no longer a problem since I had already been doing them all by myself. However, I took up cooking as well. Sometimes my dad would cook on certain nights because I started to become increasingly clumsy and frequently burned myself. We soon discovered that this was due to stress, which caused neurological and long-term physical issues for me. Eventually, my dad started taking on half of the chores. He worked during the day while I went to college in the UK, and in the evenings, we would both work on completing the chores. I still did my share, but some days it was difficult for me to manage anything at all. My dad became increasingly stressed about having to do so much, especially since he hadn't been responsible for household chores for about 8 years. His routine used to consist of going to work, taking a nap, having dinner, and then going to sleep for the night. Recently, my dad changed jobs and made new friends, most of whom are parents. I recently discovered, by seeing a notification on his phone, that he has been talking negatively about me in a group chat with his new friends. I probably shouldn't have read those messages, but his phone was left open and my curiosity got the better of me. He was expressing how challenging it is to be a single father and claimed that I never help him. There were other messages stating that I, as a teenager, have a terrible attitude and often talk back to him. He failed to mention my disabilities or any positive traits about me at all. He has also started complaining to me about how little I do and got angry at me over trivial things. I found out that he has been speaking poorly about me to other family members as well. It all made sense now and I was deeply upset. Without mentioning the group chat, I confronted him about how his words had hurt me and how it was even more hurtful that he was lying about me to family members who don't know me well enough to know the truth. I also expressed that I felt unappreciated. However, he denied everything. Now here is where I might be at fault. I told him that until he apologizes, stops lying about me and treats me disrespectfully, I will refuse to do anything around the house. It has been about a week and I haven't completed a single chore. I need to know, am I the asshole in this situation? It's not fair for him to talk badly about you and lie to others, especially when you've been shouldering a significant portion of the household chores while dealing with your own physical and neurological issues. You have every right to express your feelings and set boundaries. By refusing to do any chores until he apologizes and stops being rude and lying about you, you're standing up for yourself. It's important to address the issue and make it clear that his behavior is unacceptable. However, it might be helpful to consider having a calm and honest conversation with your father about what you've discovered. Communicate how his words have hurt you and explain why you've chosen to take this stance. Open up a dialogue and try to find a resolution that works for both of you. Am I the antagonist for taking my son for my custody time and not his half-brother? I, 30-year-old male, have an 8-year-old son with my ex-wife. During her second pregnancy, I was still married to her and believed that the baby was mine. However, I later discovered that she had cheated on me and told the other guy that he was the father. As a result, I left the marriage, filed for divorce, and took a DNA test for her younger son, confirming that I was not his father. During the divorce, we also conducted a DNA test on my son, which confirmed that he is indeed my biological child. The divorce was finalized, and I now pay a small amount of child support to equalize things since I earn more than my ex-wife. My ex was involved with the other guy for a few months after her son's birth, but he is no longer in the picture. Once he disappeared, she tried to reconcile with me, stating that our son was fortunate to have me and that she would love to have a father for her second son. I told her that she should find a good man who she wouldn't cheat on. She appeared shocked, but I made it clear that I would never trust her again or raise her son as my own after what she had done. I firmly told her that if she wanted to provide her son with a father figure, she needed to find someone else. 4 years have passed and my ex has not found someone else. She continues to try and push her younger son onto me. I had to take her back to court to establish a neutral place for us to exchange our son, because she would always have her younger son ready and waiting to come with me when I picked up my son from her house. It became a problem and she refused to stop. Therefore, I suggested meeting at a different location for exchanges, which worked for some time. However, last Friday, when I was picking up my son for my parenting time, she brought her younger son along with a packed bag, implying that he was coming with us. He approached me, arms outstretched, as if he wanted to be hugged or held, and said he was coming too. The kid looked so happy, and I felt bad for him, but I gently told him to return to his mom. He seemed confused and disappointed. To avoid any conflict, I left quickly with my son. Late Friday night and all day yesterday, my ex started texting me, calling me a jerk, and saying that I should have let her son come along. She claimed that I had proven to be an amazing father to our son, and that she wanted the same for her son. She also said that our son wanted his brother at my house, and that I was being terrible for ignoring his wishes. However, when I spoke to my son, he never mentioned wanting his half-brother to come with us. He did mention that his mom had told him to say he wanted his half-brother at my house and for me to be his father, but he didn't really care either way. Nonetheless, my ex's words get to me because I know her son doesn't really have anyone outside of my ex and my son is more focused on his friends than his half-brother. Am I the asshole? The fact that she cheated on you and lied about the paternity of the child is a serious breach of trust, and it is within your rights to choose not to have a relationship with her younger son. Your ex-wife's actions and attempts to push her son onto you show a lack of respect for your boundaries and decisions. Bringing her younger son to your parenting time without your consent is not acceptable, and is a clear violation of the agreed-upon arrangements. Furthermore, it is not fair for your ex-wife to manipulate your son into saying he wants his half-brother at your house. Your son's feelings and desires should be respected, and it should not be used as a way to guilt or pressure you into accepting her son. It is important for your ex-wife to find a stable father figure for her younger son, but it is not your responsibility to fulfill that role. You have made your decision and it should be respected. Am I the antagonist for telling me brother the truth when asked, despite knowing it wasn't what he actually wanted to hear? My brother recently approached me and our other siblings to ask for our honest opinions. He had been discussing his circumstances with us before, so we weren't completely caught off guard by his request. However, we were unsure if he would actually seek our input or simply vent about the situation. After extensive discussions among ourselves, we already had a shared understanding. Unfortunately, our brother was not present during these conversations. When the question was finally posed to us, I was the only one willing to provide an answer. Here is some background information. My brother was previously married and had 3 children with his late wife. Tragically, she passed away when their youngest child was only 4 months old, while the older 2 were still toddlers. He remained single for about 10 years, focusing on raising his kids. Eventually, he met his current wife, Kat, who was also a widow with 2 children from her late husband. All the children were at least 11 years old when they were introduced to each other, and my brother and Kat eventually became a serious couple. Although the kids were fine with their parents dating, they expressed a desire to not become a blended family. Consequently, my brother and Kat made the decision to get married and live together, while still maintaining separate parental responsibilities. They agreed that my brother would take care of his kids, Kat would take care of hers, and there would be no pressure for the 2 families to merge. This arrangement was not typical, as the kids never formed relationships with their step-parent or step-siblings. Instead, they maintained strong bonds with their biological siblings and parents. Surprisingly, this unique dynamic worked well for them, and all the children were content. My brother and Kat also found happiness within this arrangement. During their children's weddings, the bio-parent and their spouse were considered plus ones rather than family members. The step-siblings were not invited, and the spouses were excluded from family photos. Tragically, in early 2020, Kat lost both of her children. This loss has affected the current situation. Recently, my nephew and his wife announced that they are expecting their first child. My brother and Kat wanted Kat to be recognized as the child's grandmother, as her own children would never be able to provide her with grandchildren. However, my nephew shared that he did not want this dynamic to change. My brother vented his frustrations about this to my siblings and me multiple times. Eventually, he asked us if we thought the situation would change and if we found it surprising. In response, I honestly expressed that I did not anticipate any changes, and that the current dynamic made this outcome unsurprising. I explained that Kat at most is a casual acquaintance to the kids, just as my brother was to Kat's children. Given the established dynamics over the past 20 years, I never expected my brother and Kat to be recognized as grandparents by each other's grandchildren. I also mentioned that if the roles were reversed, I didn't believe Kat's children would have allowed my brother to be recognized as a grandparent either. These boundaries were set early on and have remained in place for nearly 2 decades, making it highly unlikely for them to change. I recognize that my brother might not be pleased with my response, and unfortunately I was correct. He expressed his disappointment, stating that no one expects to lose all their children and be deprived of the experience of being a grandparent. He also felt that I unfairly placed blame on him and Kat. Although our other siblings defended my perspective, my brother believed I went too far and reiterated this multiple times throughout the week. Do you think I am the one at fault here? Your brother specifically asked for your opinion, and you gave an honest response based on the established dynamic within your family. It is understandable that your brother may be feeling hurt and sensitive about the situation, but it does not make you wrong for sharing your thoughts. Ultimately, it was his decision to ask for honesty, and you provided it respectfully. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.